Hello and welcome everybody to the weekly Shir Moshiach on the internet. Thanks to you and your participation, this Shir has grown tremendously to be the largest Shir in Moshiach on the internet, given over in the English language. Tonight's Shir is actually the 10th Shir in this set of Shiurim, which B'Hashgacha Pratis, this Shir is given in the days connected and right next to Yud Shvat, the 10th of Shvat, and the 11th of Shvat. So the 10th Shir connected with the 10th of Shvat, which we know on Yud Shvat, 61 years ago in 770 Eastern Parkway, Beis Chayenu, Beis Moshiach, the Rebbe was mekabel upon himself the Nesias of Chassidus Chabad, and he let know the entire world that the 7th generation is the Dur HaGeula, and the Nasi of the Dur HaShvi is going to be the one to lead us towards the Geula. And that's directly connected to the topic of tonight's Shir. Tonight's Shir we are going to be discussing the number 10 and its connection to Geula. Because there are many things that will be done for the 10th time in Yemois HaMoshiach. So before we go into details about what those things are, which will be done for the 10th time in Yemois HaMoshiach, let's just set down the foundation of the importance of the number 10. The number 10 shows on completion. We know in Hebrew there's an expression, Ata Eser, the best, rate me from 1 to 10. 10 shows on a completion. We know that in the person there are 10 midos, Chochmah Bina Das, Chesed Gvur Tiferes, Netzach Hod Yesod Malchus. A complete person is made up of 10. And that's why when Moshiach comes, which the whole point of Moshiach is to bring a completion to Torah mitzvahs, a completion to Gilei Elikus, a completion between the connection of Yidden with Hashem, that things will be expressed in the fact that it will be happening for the 10th time. What things are going to be happening for the 10th time in Yemois HaMoshiach? The first thing is the counting of Bnei Yisrael. We know that Hashem counts Bnei Yisrael, and like Rashi points out in Bamidbar, Mitoy Chavivosam Moinem Oisam Kol Shah. Because He loves them, He keeps on counting them. We know somebody that loves something, keeps on counting. Somebody that loves money, he keeps on counting how much money he has. He enjoys going through it and seeing the number, counting it one by one by one. We know the famous story of the Rebbe by dollars. That someone asked the Rebbe, how come he doesn't get tired giving out dollars to Klal Yisrael? And the Rebbe says, do you ever get tired when you count your diamonds? In other words, because Hashem loves Klal Yisrael, He counts them from time to time. Let's say there is a magefa, unfortunately a negative thing, destroys part of Klal Yisrael, a plague or a punishment. Hashem will count the remainder. Or just to show His love, He continues to count Klal Yisrael. The Medrash tells us that throughout the history of Klal Yisrael, they were counted 9 times. But the Minyan HaAsiri, the 10th counting of Klal Yisrael, will happen in Yemois HaMoshiach, will happen in the time of Geula. And that's why it's so important to realize how each Yid is special to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, each Yid is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that individual connection is expressed in the fact that Hashem counts them. When Hashem counts Klal Yisrael, not only does He show His love to Klal Yisrael, He makes Klal Yisrael special in a whole different way. There is halach in Hilchos Taruvis, the davar shebeminyan einei batel, which means a normal thing. For example, a drop of milk falls into a bucket of chicken soup. So most mothers will run and throw out the entire soup. But in truth, the din is that drop, if there are 60 times the amount of meat that there is to that drop of milk, that drop of milk becomes nullified, the Hebrew word is batel. It's as if it's not there. However, something which is counted individually, a special thing, even if it falls into 1,000 pieces, let's say a steak, which is people buy individually, and now it falls into 1,000 other pieces of meat, of prepared meat, it no longer becomes batal, because it's a davar shebeminyan, something which you count individually. Don't quote me on that halacha, but the concept of davar shebeminyan einei batal. And that applies to when Hashem counts Klal Yisrael. He's not just showing His love for them, He's giving them the status, He's giving them the koyach not to become batal amongst the nations. Because al pi teva, according to nature, the Jew is one amongst many. We are a minority in the world. A very loud minority, but a minority nevertheless. And it's only normal that minority should be swallowed up by the majority. What gives us that strength not to be batal, not to be nullified by the overwhelming majority of non-Jews or non-Jewish ideas that are surrounding us? That is the fact that Hashem keeps on counting us. He's giving us that status. When Moshiach comes, He's going to count us that one final time. He will elevate us to that ultimate status of Einei Batul La'olam that will never be nullified forever. What's interesting that there is a great discussion amongst the Mefarshim. If the counting when Mashiach comes will be done in a little bit of a different manner than it was done until now. In the past, how would you count Klal Yisrael? Every year we give a half a shekel. Because we don't count people, we count coins. We don't want to count each one individually because that brings an ayin hara and a negative thing. According to a lot of the Mefarshim, when Mashiach comes, every year is going to give a complete shekel. Because the reason why we give a half a shekel is because we have to be reminded that we are not as big as we think we are. We're only a half. There's us, there's Hashem, there's us, there's another Yid. We have to be constantly reminded. Our egos have to be kept in check. However, when Mashiach comes, Vasruach Hatuva Aver Min Oretz, there will be no negative things, and therefore we will not need to have that reminder. And on the contrary, our unity with Hashem will be so great that we will be totally one with Hashem, that we will be able to give the complete shekel. Talking about counting Klal Yisrael, the Rebbe brings down something very fascinating. When we have Jews and we're looking to make a minyan, it's almost the standard procedure today that everyone says Ashia Samecha Varch Nachsecha, using the pasuk Ashia Samecha to see if there's 10 people, because there are 10 words in that pasuk. In the past, that wasn't the pasuk that was used. There were other pasukim in Tanakh that were used to count people for a minyan. The Rebbe tells us that as we get closer to Moshiach, the Jews feel that, and all of a sudden they will use a Moshiach pasuk, even though subconsciously they're just looking for a minyan. The pasuk Ashia Samecha is telling Hashem to redeem Klal Yisrael. So even when it's just a side thing, we're counting a minyan. But Klal Yisrael is so in tune, their neshama is so in tune with Mashiach that subconsciously we're already using a pasuk that deals with Mashiach and redemption and begging Hashem to take us out of Galus. So that's the first thing of 10 that's going to happen when Mashiach comes. The counting of Klal Yisrael. The next thing is the 10th Parah Aduma. The Rambam brings down at the end of Hilchos Parah Aduma Perek Gimel, that throughout the history of Klal Yisrael, there were 9 Paras Aduma starting from Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar. He was the one that gave the koyach. Ve'ikhu elecha Parah Aduma Tmima. That it all starts from Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the one that gives the koyach to purify Klal Yisrael. But the Rambam says, Vo'asiris, the 10th one, Yaseh Melech HaMashiach, Melech HaMashiach will do. In other words, the complete purification of Klal Yisrael will be done in the times of Mashiach. Now there's a tremendous discussion. In order to bring the Parah Aduma, you have to have someone that was Tar Be'etzem. So will that take a long time when Mashiach comes? The people will be purified. But the Rebbe tells us that the Moshe and Aaron, being that they'll come back earlier, the tzaddikim, special tzaddikim that will come back earlier, they may be able to be used to spray the ashes of the Parah Aduma on Klal Yisrael. But once we're talking about the 10th Parah Aduma, it's very important to focus on the next part of the Rambam. Right after the Rambam says that the Mashiach will bring the 10th Parah Aduma, he adds a few words, which he says, Meheira Yigala Amen Ken Yiratzim. May Mashiach reveal himself, Amen. And the Rebbe asks the question, why all of a sudden in the middle of Hilchos Parah Aduma is the Rambam davening for Mashiach? In other words, The Rambam is halacha sefer. It's not a sefer of drushes and bakashas and requests and prayer. In the middle of Hilchos Parah Aduma, he starts davening for Moshiach, Meheira Yigala Amen King Hirotzen. If already he's going to daven for Moshiach, shouldn't he daven for Moshiach in the halacha of Melech HaMoshiach? In the end of Sefer Shoftim? But the Rebbe teaches us on the contrary, the Rambam is teaching us halacha. The halacha is that we have to anticipate Mashiach's coming, we have to await Mashiach, we have to believe in Mashiach. What's the barometer? How do we know if somebody's totally anticipating Geula? That is, says the Rebbe, we learn from the Rambam. Let's say you're learning about something, a side thing, Hilchos Parah Aduma, and the Mashiach comes up, someone tells you that Mashiach will bring the 10th Parah Aduma. That's supposed to awaken in you the yearning and desire to daven for Mashiach. Not just when you're learning about Mashiach, but even when Mashiach is brought up on a side point. The very fact that Mashiach is mentioned reminds you of your need for Mashiach, and right away you daven, Meheira Yigala, Amen Ken Yehirotz. And that is the halacha that the Rambam is teaching us. And that's the second thing that will be completed when Mashiach comes. Another thing that will happen for the 10th time when Mashiach comes is the 10th song. We know that Yidden sang Shira many times. Oz Yoshir Moshe, saying Shira. And we know that Parshas B'Shalach, which we're actually currently giving the Shira in Parshas B'Shalach, which is the Parsha of the Shira, it speaks about the Shira that Yidden sang, it speaks about the Shira that Miriam sang, and that the women, the Neshei Chabad of that time, they were so, Rashi writes, they were so certain in the Geula that they already prepared tambourines, they already prepared the musical instruments, because they knew Hashem's going to show them miracles and they wanted to sing and thank Hashem. And the Rebbe says in our generation we have to learn from them to be prepared for the Geula with such emunah. They're already preparing in advance the tools which we're going to be celebrating, the Geula Amitis Vashlema, like the tambourines. But anyways, throughout the history of Klal Yisrael, in Tanakh it's brought down that Yidden sang 9 times. However, it says in when Mashiach comes, we're going to sing the new song. But the Medrash says something interesting, that throughout Tanakh, when it refers to the songs the Yidden sang, it says Shira, Lashon Nekeva in the grammar, it's Lashon Nekeva, in the feminine form. However, when it referring to Geula, it says V'noim L'cha Shir Chadash Lashon Zachar, which is a more masculine form. And Chazal tell us the reason is as follows. A woman associated with childbirth is also associated with pain. In other words, it's a sign of weakness. And therefore, being that in the time of Golus, even in our high points, when we had the Beis Hamikdash, there was always going to be a pain that was going to come after. There was always going to be another Golus. So it was that high and low, which is associated with the feminine cycle. However, when Mashiach comes, it's going to be steady good. It's going to remain strong forever. That's why it says, V'noim L'cha Shir Chadash Lashon Zachar, in a more masculine form, a more strong form, because the Geula is going to be Amitis Vashlem, it's going to be everlasting, and therefore, there's not going to be another drop, another low in the cycle. It's going to be steady good. Another thing associated with the number 10 is the 10 strings of the harp. It says that the kinnor of Melech HaMashiach means will have 10 strings. Well, I'm not a major musician. You know, there are different notes, and what it brings out, according to the Kabbalah and Chassidus, that the harp represents our ability to serve the Eibishter in a whole elevated way. When Mashiach comes, the service of Hashem will be on a much more elevated way than it was until now. How do we prepare for the Shir Chodesh? Many times the Rebbe would sing the Nigunim of the Rabbeim, starting from the Baal Shem Tov all the way down to the Rebbe's Nigun. And the Rebbe would always say that's a hachana, that's preparation to these 9, so to speak. The 9 Rabbeim are a hachana for the Shir Asiris, for the time of Eser, for the 10th Tkufa. And that's why it's very important to realize that all the Rabbeim, what they did to bring about the Geula, the Rebbe is the last step, the Spheres HaMalchus in the chain, which brings about the Geula. And therefore I encourage each and every one of you I recently, in honor of Yud Shvat, Tov Shinayim Beis, 62 years, we compiled a special kuntris, which is entitled The Rabbeim and Moshiach, which in that booklet it outlines all the activities of what the Rabbeim did to bring the Shekhinah lower into this physical world until the Rebbe cements it into the world with the 10 Mivtzoyim, which is connected to the same point of bringing it into every part of the world with every midah of the world. And it outlines all the activities that they did. Obviously not every one, but in general how we see that the Shekhinah was being brought lower, lower, lower until the Dor Hashvi of the Rebbe brings it Lamata Ba'aretz. For those that are interested, available for free download, or want to donate to the yeshiva on Yud Shvat, which you're supposed to also help the moistus of the Rabbeim, you go to ylcincinnati.com, which is abbreviation for Yeshivas Lubavitch Cincinnati, ylcincinnati.com, and you'll see a link to download the new book, The Rabbeim and Moshiach. And once again, we wish you and your families a happy and healthy journey to Geula. Looking forward to seeing you and everyone together in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, Bimheira V'Yameinu Mamash.